Big Lez's League, an all rugby league experience. Hello, welcome back to Big Lez's League, an all rugby league experience. Welcome back to another episode of Breaking Bread with myself and Isaac Issa. Isaac, mate, big weekend for yourself. How you doing?
I'm recovering. It's a Monday after a big long weekend, so I'm roaring to get back into it. But yeah, definitely on the mend after a big weekend. How about yourself?
Oh, mate, you and me both. Not as big as yourself, I don't think, but certainly enjoyed the Anzac weekend. Let's get stuck in, mate, because there is a bit to get through here and a few fun ones as well that, might not be on other platforms as well. So, mate, get stuck in. What's your first update for me?
Absolutely, man. So we're going to go through kind of the biggest stories that I kind of covered last week for Zero Tackle. And I feel like even though it's been a few weeks, it's still probably the biggest talking point in footy at the moment, and that's Lachie Galvin. Now, obviously, a lot of fans would have noticed that the Tigers got the 2-point win over the Sharkies yesterday with Galvin's return, which is just, it's awesome for Tigers fans and it's good for the sport as well. And they have secured their place back in the 9th spot on the ladder, which will make a lot of Tigers fans happy. But the latest development in the Galvin saga, Matty Johns has made his latest prediction into what he thinks is kind of going on behind the scenes. And obviously someone like Matty Johns holds a lot of power in the NRL space and probably has a few sources that may be contributing to his thoughts. But Matty Johns came on SEN's The Run Home last week, proclaiming that he doesn't think Galvin will be at the Tigers next year. He said there's no doubt that Galvin is manoeuvring for a release. Which is a huge call to make. Obviously, with him now coming back into the side, he has made it clear that he believes Galvin will not be a Tiger in 2026, despite both him and the Tigers saying that he will be. And this comes amid a lot of rumours and allegations regarding bullying. And Matty Johns thinks that potentially the admission of the legal battle in regards to the bullying around Galvin and his other teammates may be him manoeuvring for a release, and that there's more to it than just a complaint being put into the RLPA. So with everything that's been kind of going on, could we be seeing these bullying allegations as a way for Galvin and his management to get an early release from the Tigers? Or is it just simply a complaint being put in to make it a better environment? Matty Johns has had his say, and I think it's really worth talking about at the moment.
Yeah, 100%, mate. It is quite a big topic. Obviously, Galvin, it is quite wild for a player to come out 2 years before he becomes off contract and say that he's going to get out of there. And, there's been a bunch of developments over the past 2 weeks. We've talked about it when it just came out. But, yeah, look, to be honest, I thought there'd be a lot more animosity there between himself and the playing group. Watching him play on Sunday, it looks like they're still, they've got a job to do. They're quite well focused and they're playing well together. Like him and Luai celebrate together when tries are scored. It doesn't look like there's too much animosity there. I think that Luai sort of put it behind him now. I think that the teammates have done the same. So from an animosity perspective, it sort of looks like it's calmed down on that end and they've really focused on the role and the job at hand, which is obviously trying to get into finals. But yeah, look, I mean, the bullying allegations as well. Like Shane Richardson came out on the James Graham's podcast, The Buy Round, and he sort of explained the situation a little bit. It was more so the managers, being Isaac Moses, of those two players, obviously coming out and having those bullying allegations, and then both Tummuth and Matamua, who are the two players that were rumoured to be the ones going out to the RPLA and putting forward that there was bullying at the club. They both went to the RPLA and said, no, this isn't the case. It wasn't us that, have had these experiences, and it was a ploy from the manager. So it's been a wild past few days in regards to this sort of story and Galvin and what he's going to do. I do think, though, like animosity, no animosity, I just feel like it's now in the situation, what Isaac Moses has done over the past 2 weeks or reported to have done, I just feel like it's in a spot now where he's probably bound to leave next year. I think that there is 2 clubs that I think would need his services. I think there's one club in particular that probably does need his service ASAP as well, which actually isn't Parramatta. I think that Galvin will leave at the end of the year. I was sort of thinking 2 weeks ago when this whole news story came out that we were going to see him leave this season and a bit earlier. But just watching them play on the weekend and his body language and his post-game interview on Fox League as well, it looks like that he is a lot more comfortable at the moment and he's pretty focused on the job at hand, which is obviously getting his Tigers side to finals. But, mate, what are your thoughts on the situation and what have you taken out of it from everything that's happened over the past few days?
Yeah, absolutely, man. And one of the biggest points that you kind of made out was, on field, it looked like it's worth touching on because Johns actually went on in his spiel about Galvin to say, and I quote, I'll read the quote to you now, and it's basically exactly what you said. He said, in the dressing room, blokes can be off each other, and there's only one thing that can solve all that, and that's a good win. If they go out this weekend, play well, and get the win, they will walk into the sheds and bury the hatchet. That's what he said, and that was before, obviously, they won that game against the Sharkies. And even us, just as spectators, we could see that was the case. And it's crazy how in rugby league, how much a win can change things for your side. In regards to what I think is kind of happening there with Galvin and Johns' thoughts on him maneuvering for a release, like you said, and it brings us back to a point that we spoke about 2-3 weeks ago where, coming out and saying that you're leaving a club 2 years out from the end of your contract, it basically does speak to them maneuvering for a release. And whether that happens this year or next year, I do think he will play up the rest of his season with the Tigers, as you say. But whether there's animosity or not, I think it goes beyond just the tension in the locker room, and I think it goes deeper. And, Isaac Moses, I think, is the biggest talking point. And there's very few player agents that hold this much power in these situations. And it's almost frightening for fans and NRL officials and clubs and stuff to know that a player agent can hold this much power in a player's future and a club's future. So even though they went out and they got the win over the weekend, which was, it's amazing for Tigers fans. They really deserve it, especially after all this. I do think it does run a little bit deeper, and I don't think we see Galvin in a Tigers jersey next year, which absolutely sucks. But at the end of the day, the bullying allegations, the statements, coming out saying that he will be leaving, I think Matty Johns has hit it right on the nose. He will finish out this year because that's what both him and the Tigers need. But from 2026, I don't see him in, the black and orange colors. And I personally do see him at the Parramatta Eels. I don't know if you've got different thoughts on that, but I do see him at the Parramatta Eels next year. But as for this year, I see him playing out the rest of his season. I see him excelling for the Tigers. I don't think they drop him again. And then from next year onwards, I think it's a different ballgame.
I do have a little bit of a shout for you, mate. I think that if he does leave next year, he probably does go to Parramatta. I think that, the junior ties there, he's got his coach that coached him in high school at the club as well. It all sort of aligns with Galvin going to the Parramatta Eels for next year. But I think that there's a club right now that's in a situation that's do or die, and they need a 5'8" that's going to assist Cleary with, running the side at the Panthers. I think if he does go for an early release, particularly halfway through this season, I think there's a good chance that Penrith are going to be the club knocking on the door. I think that they do need a 6 immediately to take the pressure off Cleary. Now, whether that be Brad Schneider, whether Blaze Talangi becomes that guy, I'm not too sure. But I think that what you get with Galvin and what we're seeing at the moment with his playing style with Luai, he does take a bit of a front step. Luai takes a bit of a backward step and sort of lets him run the team and have his own attacking sets and things like that. So I think that there is, I wouldn't say there's a real possibility. It's all speculation. But I think if he does get an early release for this season, to leave this season, or if there's a potential trade window that we see open up here, I think that Lachie Galvin could end up at the Penrith Panthers, and I think maybe Blaze Talangi goes to the West Tigers. Maybe that's a little trade deal that you go with there. Again, all speculation and all hearsay, but I think that it's definitely a possibility. But you said it yourself, mate. I think that the stars align with him going to the Parramatta Eels. I think that he'll probably will be at the Parramatta Eels for next year. But if he does get an early release for a little bit sooner, maybe halfway through this season, Penrith's going to be a side that's going to be knocking on the door, especially when they have to win the next 11 out of their next 16 games. So, mate, what are your thoughts on that bombshell?
Yeah, you know what, mate, honestly, and I think it reminds me a lot of Tavita Bangai Jr. a few years ago, when obviously he left the Broncos and joined the Penrith Panthers mid-season. And it was just, obviously his career didn't pan out as we thought it would, but he probably played his best footy there. And I can definitely see that something like that happening for Galvin as well. Me personally, I honestly don't see why Panthers haven't been the outright favorite to sign him. Obviously, there's a connection with Isaac Moses and Mitchell Moses, as well as, Galvin being a junior at Parramatta. But as you say, they are in desperate need of a six, and Galvin wants to be in a winning situation. Obviously, I don't know how the contract, the salary cap would kind of work with Galvin joining them long term. But if you're just talking about this year, I feel like, he'd obviously be staying in Sydney. He'd be joining a potential premiership contender. Obviously, they're last on the ladder, but we all know that this isn't the end for the Penrith Panthers. I don't mind it at all. And if I'm being honest, I think it potentially makes even more sense than him going to Parramatta. And I think if he were to maneuver for a mid-year release, and if I'm the Tigers, if I can get a young guy like Blaze Talangi over at the club in exchange for him, I'd absolutely be doing it. I don't know of many other clubs that would be able to offer a player of Galvin's caliber. And that's not to say that Talangi is, but he definitely could be. I know there's been talk about potentially Kai Pearce-Paul making his way over to the Tigers, and there being like a 4-team trade between the Knights, the Dogs, the Parramatta Eels, and the Tigers. So there's a lot of talk there. But if you're looking for just a simple trade-off, I wouldn't mind seeing Blaze Talangi head over to the Tigers. Now, whether Talangi's going over there to play six, to play center, to play fullback, I guess obviously I don't know what your kind of thoughts are there, but I definitely can see it happening, and I think it would be honestly great for all parties if that were to happen.
Well, look, the Tigers, you think about it a bit deeper, they've got Latu Fanu, who they need to develop as well. They're going to be at risk of losing they're going to be at risk of losing him if they, go in another direction, or, if Galvin were to stay, they would be at risk at losing him. He's going to be the future there anyway in the halves, you would think, when Galvin does leave. They've got Adam Dewey there that's played 7 to a serviceable level as well. They've got the guys that can hop in there and fill that role. If Galvin were to leave, Talangi can hop in there. He can also play centre, fullback. He can cover a lot of positions. He'd be like a Dane Laurie sort of replacement there for the Tigers if you think about it that way. So I think that it would be a good move in that regard. And I think that people got to remember, obviously when you're looking at these trades, talent's a big part, potential's a big part. You want to obviously get someone in return that's got similar potential and talent, right? But you got to remember that Galvin's on 250, 300K. He's not on 800K. He's not on 900K. He's not on $1 million. He's on 250, 300K at the Tigers at the moment. So you can get away with a bit of a smaller, it's not saying a smaller player, but someone like a Blaze Talangi or someone of that sort of caliber who isn't yet proven in the NRL. And make the trade that way from a salary cap perspective. And I think that, you talked about Penrith signing him long term. If he's on that much, they can get away with giving him a 2-year deal and then upgrading him a little bit later if it works out for them in the future. I think that it does make sense. I think that it's definitely something we could potentially see. But again, it's all speculation. I haven't heard anything suggesting that he's going to the Panthers or anything like that. Isaac, I don't know if you've heard much linking him to the Penrith Panthers other than the conversation that we've just had. But look, I think it's a real possibility. I think that it could happen, and it might be a little bit of a speed bump before he goes to Parramatta as well.
Sweet. So the next story that we've got, probably one of the biggest stories in the last week, return to the West. NRL ticks off on Perth expansion. So NRL fans from Western Australia and Bears fans can dare to dream once again, with the ARLC signing off on an increased offer from Western Australia Premier Roger Cook, which will see the Bears make their return to the West Coast from 2027. So just last week, the Sydney Morning Herald reported that the ARLC met on Wednesday morning, approving the offer that an 18th NRL team in Western Australia is set to join the NRL in 2027. So there have been a lot of developments since then in regards to the Bears and a lot of opinions as well. So I'm keen to hear kind of your thoughts on the potential of a West Coast side joining the NRL in 2027 and potentially being the 18th squad to join the league.
Yeah, man, I'm super pumped. I think that it's great. We have another team in. I'm also looking forward to there being no more buys as well, which would be great. But yeah, look, I mean, it's great to see that we're expanding the game. We're getting to all different parts of Australia. Obviously, the next step would be teams like PNG and maybe some island teams as well, hopping into the league and sort of expanding in that space as well. But super excited, bro. I think it's going to be so good for the game to have all these teams in there, and it's going to be great to watch as well. It's going to be keen to see from a recruitment piece. I know how fun it was to sort of predict who was going to go to the Dolphins and who, obviously, players off contract and things like that. It's going to be just as fun trying to predict, obviously, who's going to go to the Bears, and that's going to be a great bit of content in itself. So should be fun to watch, mate. Just for the game as well, to have another team in to expand the game like they have, obviously going over in the future as well outside Australia to, you know, whether it be Polynesian teams, whether it be PNG, obviously coming into the competition as well. I think it's going to be great as we further expand the game and get a bigger audience as well. It's just so good to see that we're sort of starting to go into that direction. So keen for the Bears. Also keen, I mean, we sort of, you know, went into it quite deep when the Dolphins came into the competition as well and you know, speculate as to who they're going to get, who the star signing's going to be and all of that fun stuff. Having that again here with the Bears as well, and a little bit different, obviously not being a Queensland or New South Wales team, going all the way over to Perth is going to be interesting as well. There's not many players currently in the NRL that were born in Perth or have lived in Perth as well. So that in itself is going to be quite interesting as to who's, you know, willing to make the move. Similar for PNG, like who's going to be willing to make the move over there as well. All that sort of speculation and fun. It's going to be great to do that all again like we did with the Dolphins, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, you know, there's been a lot of talk about, like, is there enough talent in the NRL to feed through to these new sides coming in? But you look at the Dolphins and what they've managed to do in the past few years. Yeah, they haven't been a powerhouse, but they've certainly been exciting to watch. And I feel like the only negative that's come from having the Dolphins in the league is that we've had to have buys every week. But other than that, like it's honestly been paid dividends, like, and it's been amazing for the league to bring in that other side. And when you look at the Dolphins, they were a second team brought in through Brisbane, and they still just they smashed it as soon as they came in. So you can only imagine what a Western Australian side would look like in terms of numbers and memberships and growing the game even further. So I think it's an absolute, it's long overdue bringing in a side in from Perth. And I think it'll be a vital step towards growing the game. Now, before negotiations between the NRL and the Western Australian government came to a halt earlier in the month, the government was willing to commit to a $20 million Centre of Excellence at the Malaga Sports Precinct development. So, and that's only, you know, it's located 13 km from the Perth CBD. And it just goes to show that how serious Western Australia is about having a side in the NRL. And you know, when you've got the WA government, you know, so keen to bring in that side, it's a no-brainer to me, to be honest. Now, if the Perth Bears were to become, come to fruition, the NRL would essentially be in charge of that side for the first few years before it is handed to the club's members and elected directors. So it would definitely have the backing of the NRL, as it would be essentially run by NRL officials from the start. So look, all signs really point to it being a success. It's just a matter of ironing out a few crinkles, which I think the WA government and the NRL will sort out in the next few weeks and months. And, you know, you'd hope that they figure it out soon, because, you know, a year and a half isn't a long time to get an NRL side up and running. So the sooner that they can kind of tick that off and confirm that side will be joining in 2027, the sooner we can kind of get a coach in and start looking at recruiting superstar players into the side over in WA.
Yeah, 100%, mate. And as I said, it will be interesting to see who those guys are, whether it be potentially a Ryan Pappenhausen or you get big stars like that caliber over there as well, how many of those stars you can get. I mean, there were plenty of rumours about Cam Munster going to the Dolphins. He backflipped on them to stay at Melbourne. How many clubs, though, are going to, or how many players, I mean, are going to be willing to go over and make that trip to Perth? That's going to be the real interesting factor in this. It's not like you're going up to Redcliffe, going up to Brisbane. You're going all the way to the other side of the country, and that's obviously going to be a massive factor in obviously how many players they can get, who they can sign. In saying that as well, new club, obviously new salary cap as well. Players are going to go over there to get the bag, but it will be interesting to see who exactly are those players that are going to be willing to take that risk to go over to Western Australia as well. So, yeah, look, mate, it's going to be fun to watch. Obviously, that whole 24 months of picking who's going to go there. But, yeah, I'm super excited for it. What's the next story you've got for me?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Kind of taking a bit of a turn from just the NRL chat into the NRLW. Now, obviously, we all love talking Origin, and it's never too early to talk Origin, but it's especially not too early to discuss women's state of origin. Now, for those who are kind of, gearing up for the Magic round that's coming, there's also the game one of the women's state of origin coming as well. And so Tani Norris, which is the Queensland Maroons coach, is looking to blood 4 new debutantes into their Queensland side. So Norris has identified Rory Owen and Jasmine Peters as her new centre and wing duo, with the pair set to shore up the Maroons' backline. You've also got Jada Ferguson and Tavana Papali'i, who will be on the bench. So that would be the four new players that are joining the side. And they join, a list of stars, most notably like Tamika Upton at fullback. You've got, Ali Brigginshaw at halfback. You've got stars all across the board for the Queensland women's game one squad. And I feel like it's just another step towards growing the game. We talk about expansion, like we literally just spoke about bringing in an 18th side, but the other flip side of that expansion is, the amount of talent that's kind of coming through in the women's game. With these 4 new faces set to join into the Queensland State of Origin, it just goes to show how much talent is kind of coming through the NRLW. That you've got players who were in the side before who are kind of missing out now for these new players to kind of join in, and it's really exciting. So we've got the game one match on Thursday, the 1st of May, to kick off Magic round, and I think it's really exciting time for these women who are going to get their chance to sport the Maroons colours and represent their state. But it's also just exciting for fans of the game in general, that so much is kind of happening around the expansion of the game.
Yeah, 100%, mate. I've really enjoyed the past, few years as the NRLW has grown, and even last year's series, like the last year's Origin series for the girls was unbelievable. Like, so many great moments. The way that we played in game one as well, and then obviously go down in games 2 and 3, but not in a big fashion as well. It were tight games. And I love the physicality of the NRLW. Like, you wouldn't really associate it with it, or you wouldn't really, it's not something that a lot of people would talk about, but the aggression in the women's game, and it's like rugby league, like NRL, like 20 years ago. Not just like with the playing style and things like that, but just like the physicality. I love it. I love the big shots that they put on, and it's going to be another great year of NRLW. I can feel it, especially with the side starting to slowly even out, because you had, especially with the contract situations in the NRLW over the past few years, like, some clubs have been absolutely stacked, and then you've got other clubs that have been really talented. But now it's like slowly sort of starting to even out. The contracts are starting to get sorted out. Some of the girls are on 2 and 3 and 4 year deals. So it's going to be really exciting this year, not just from an Origin sense, but from an actual the game sense. It's going to be really fun to see the girls go at it again next season.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And it's seeing these new faces come in, it's so exciting because, again, for the longest time, a lot of people, there was this stigma that there wasn't enough talent to go around in the NRLW. But, to see, star players kind of missing out on the squad to blood in these new faces, it just goes to show, how much it's really growing. And it's a really interesting point that you brought up that, it's like the NRL 20 years ago. The passion that these girls play with, it's like you finally let the beast out. It's like they've been caged for so long and you finally let it out, and it's super exciting. And the fact that the game one's kind of coming during Magic Round, it kind of just sweetens the pot. And it, as fans of the game, we're eating well, in a sense. So it's really exciting, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how these girls kind of come through, given their opportunity. And, still fingers crossed that Blues get the win. But these girls, I think they're going to do Queensland proud, and it's only going to, grow the game even more and draw more faces and eyes to the game.
Mate, it's going to be a great weekend, and shout out to the NRLW and the scheduling there. It's perfect. It lines up so well. Mate, I tell you what, I'm going to be looking forward to finishing training on a Thursday and going straight to the pub to watch the NRLW. Tell you that for free. It is going to be so good. And as I said, the scheduling, to have it right near Magic Round, absolutely perfect stuff. Perfect stuff. What's the next update you got for us, mate?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So for our last thing today, for those who've kind of been listening to the episodes, I do like to kind of finish off on one of my opinion pieces. So over at Zero Tackle, one of the most, kind of fun things that I work on are opinion pieces, and just getting the opportunity to give my thoughts on, some trending topics that, you talk about at the pub or at home with your family. And so this week, I'm really interested to get your thoughts on what you think of this story that I popped in. 5 stars who will be cut from State of Origin in 2025. So again, another State of Origin chat, but I really think this was an interesting one, and I got a lot of agreements and pushback on this one. I was a bit nervous to publish this story, but I'm definitely keen to hear how you kind of view my selections here. So the 5 stars that I've picked out, Bradman Best is the first one that I've left out of my Origin squad. Just obviously with Stephen Crichton, I believe Stephen Crichton is a shoe-in to that side. I think he is a lock-in on that right edge. And I don't think you can leave out the Canterbury captain out of that blue squad. So with the right side essentially already picked out at centre, over at the left, you've either got Latrell Mitchell, Tom Trbojevic, or you've got Bradman Best. Now, obviously Bradman Best killed it last year, but that was with injuries to Latrell and Tom Trbojevic. So if you're going to have Bradman Best in the side again, both those guys need to be injured or suspended. And I do think that at least one of them will be fit and ready to go by the time game 1 rolls around. So I've got Bradman Best missing out on my blue side. Moving over to my next exclusion, will be Kurt Capewell for the Queensland Maroons. Now, Kurt Capewell has been a serviceable player for the Maroons. He's played 10 matches for them and he's killed it. However, I do think that age is catching up to Capewell. I don't think he is as electric as he once was. Obviously, super versatile in his time for Queensland, playing in the back line, playing in the second row as well. I've then got Mitchell Moses missing out on my blue side, which was probably caused the most kind of uproar, at least I found. But I do have Moses missing out on that number 6 jersey for the Blues. And that's simply because Laurie Daly has come out and confirmed that Nathan Cleary is essentially a lock into this Blues side. And I'm of the belief that if you're going to have Nathan Cleary in the 7, you need to have Jerome Luai in the 6. Now, obviously, Mitchell Moses did a killer job last year playing in that role alongside Luai, but I just think that, a 4-time premiership winning duo is too good to leave out of your Origin squad. So I definitely think that even though I do believe Moses may be the better player out of him and Luai, I do think that you do need to keep that Penrith combination alive. I've then got Reece Walsh missing out on Origin this year as well. Now, obviously, he has sustained an injury, but even if he is available for Game 2 or Game 3, I don't think he keeps that spot. Now, we saw the Broncos essentially killed it for the Maroons for the Broncos last week. Brisbane was elite in giving the Bulldogs their first loss of the year. and that was with Walsh out of the side. And so I think with players like Jai Gray and Kalen Ponga both vying for that fullback spot for Queensland, I do think that Walsh misses out on the side in entirety this year. And I think it needs to be a reset for him as well, because I think he's putting a little bit too much pressure on himself. And then finally, I've got Jake Trbojevic missing out on this Blue squad. Now, obviously, the captain of the Blues last year, which had a lot of fans kind of scratching their head as to why he was the captain. And, he didn't really prove the doubters wrong, as he didn't really play much of the series. He spent a lot of the time on the bench. And now I just think with the rise of Terrell May, who is essentially a lock into that front row spot alongside Payne Haas, and then you've got guys like Kalamatangi, like Jake Preston, like a Hamole Olakawatsu. They're all kind of vying for those spots inside as well. I just don't think there's any room for Jake Trbojevic in the side. So those are my 5 guys that I've got kind of missing out, but I'd be keen to hear your thoughts. And if you think, I've missed it on a few of these guys, or if you think these guys won't be in the squad this year.
Yeah, look, to be honest, I agree with a lot of what you said. I think that, there's a lot of players there that have been very serviceable for their state. I think that you've got guys like Kurt Capewell, who's done a great job over the past few years, for sure. Jake Trbojevic has been an absolute servant to the Blues, captain the side. He's been great. I do have the feeling, though, that Moses will be the guy to get picked in the 6 over Luai. Yes, there's that Penrith combination. I get it. But, Cleary having that support with Moses, having 2 options for a kicking game, both guys running their edges and then combining as well. Moses and Cleary both have a great kicking game, so they can literally alternate between 7 and 6. I just think that's such a dangerous thing to have. And, while it sort of isn't working for the Broncos at the moment, they're still trying to find their feet in regards to that combination. I think that Moses and Cleary, 2 guys in their prime, or at least Moses is in his prime at the moment, I think that it is going to be off its head. And, once we see Cleary with a side that's moving forward and that's going a lot better than what his Penrith side is currently going at the moment, I think that he's going to be absolutely unstoppable. For me, gun to head, I'd probably even have Cleary at 6 with Moses at 7, just off the back of what Moses did last year at 7. But yeah, look, I love it. I think that you've got to have Moses and Cleary there just based off form. I think if Moses does what he did against the Tigers again over the next few weeks, you've got to have him in there. Luai, I think, is the guy that's going to miss out, not only on this side, but I think on the squad as well. It's not due to a form thing. I think that he'll definitely be in and around that space, but I think that you probably have Moses and Cleary there in the halves. I'd be giving Isaiah Katoa a shot in the squad just to learn off those guys as well, and learn off Joey, learn off the coaching staff, and have that experience as well, because I think that he'll be a player that's in and around that space in the future as well. So that's probably the way that I'd be going. I think it's a big call for sure. But, I agree with everything else you said. I think that Jake Trbojevic, at the end of the day, he's not in the best form. He's had a few injuries to start the year, and he is slowing down quite a bit. I think that it just isn't worthwhile having him in there for that 20 minutes when you've got guys like Terrell May, like Payne Haas, Mitch Barnett, guys that defend well, and that can have a little bit more mobility around the ruck, a little bit better and silkier with the ball as well. Kurt Capewell the same. I think that form-wise, he just hasn't been there and hasn't got up to that level. A few of those other guys as well. Bradman Best is going to be super unlucky not to be in that side as well. And then Reece Walsh, obviously, due to injury, but more so due to the way that he started the year and just, as you said, putting himself under a bit of pressure. I agree with that. I think that he'll miss out even if he was fit to go. But yeah, look, the only one I sort of push back on there is Mitch Moses. I think that he'll be there, mate. I think Luai is going to be that unlucky guy to miss out.
Yeah, man. And to be honest with you, when writing it, I did find like I was really iffy about it. I think my biggest kind of inkling that I think that Luai will be the guy is seeing how much Penrith have fallen off since Luai leaving. Now, obviously, there have been other guys leave the squad, and a lot of change in that Penrith side, but I feel like Cleary is really missing Luai. And that's not to say that Cleary can't be successful without Luai or vice versa, but I think you're now seeing just how important that combination was between the two. And I also think that while Moses is elite and killed it for the Blues last year, he was that main guy. And I feel like if you do want to consider Nathan Cleary a lock-in, which Laurie Daly has, you need to give him the confidence that he is that guy. And you just know for a certainty that Luai will allow him to be that guy, because Luai is even doing it now with Galvin, even though he's a captain of his new club. So kind of thing, then an on-field talent thing, because I do think that Moses coming in, he is the big dog. He's a little bit older than Cleary. And yes, while Cleary has been more successful than him, I think it will be hard for Moses to give up the reins, especially because he killed it last year. I honestly prefer the combination of Moses and Luai than Cleary and Moses. So while I do think that Moses is a better player than Luai right now, I just think for chemistry and the combination, I do prefer Luai and Cleary. And as for the rest, I do think those guys will all miss out. But I also think that there's going to be a lot of fresh debutants, which is super exciting for Origin, that we're going to see some new faces. And it just goes to show how much talent is kind of floating around the league.
100%, mate. Well, look, I'm really keen to see what changes are made and who are the unlucky guys to miss out. And if your list is 5 from 5, if you're completely right, or maybe if there's a few guys that end up scraping their way in. Mate, awesome episode yet again this week. Thanks for hopping on, Isaac. We'll see you next week.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on, man. We'll be back next week.